artificial intelligence with accessible storytelling. His work has appeared in leading international publications such as Nature, New Scientist, and Scientific American. Moving on to the third panelist, who is Aayushi Singh. She's the co-founder and chief product officer of Magicroll.ai, a generative AI startup with a strong background in product design and development. She is passionate about building user-first technology that makes artificial intelligence accessible and impactful. She represents the new wave of women leaders shaping India's AI ecosystem. Last but not the least, we have our host for this session, Mr. Arvind Saraf, who is a computer scientist, engineering leader, and entrepreneur. He has built and scaled technology teams across industries, combining deep technical expertise with a knack for innovation. His interests lie in leveraging cutting edge computing to solve real world problems and foster entrepreneurship. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, can we please put our hands together as I invite them onto the stage for the session? Can we please have a huge round of applause for our speakers and the host joining us right here on the stage?
Two award-winning authors and one young entrepreneur. We'll try to do some justice to it. Just for range setting, I think when we talk of tech, right? So just from some context before we get into interactions with the panelists, right? So tech is essentially any innovation which is at the cutting edge of science and technology, and hence by nature is fundamentally disruptive. Possibly also has a differentiator that people can't catch up because it's innovation based, right? And just to context it with the AI, we all talk about AI when there were panel discussions a few minutes ago also talking about AI, but AI is just one of the technologies of deep tech. And arguably not all of AI that we see right now is deep tech. A lot of AI is about building existing applications using what is already known or available as a technology. Whereas if you teaching AI to, let's say, police, frontier, or DeepSeek or AlphaFold, for example, then it starts becoming deep tech. So for this discussion, we will begin with the context of AI and machine learning and then broaden into deep tech. But as I said, lot to cover. We'll take about 30 minutes for interaction and then we'll open the floor for questions. Yeah, so start thinking about your questions. So I'll begin with Anil here. Anil's recent book is this book called Why Machines Learn, right? And it helps us understand what's happening in AI. How do these machine learning models, how have they become suddenly more powerful? Where's the maths powering them? Why has it started clicking now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. This is a great pleasure. I think for most people, when they think about AI, it's probably, our awareness of it just began with ChatGPT in the broader culture. But the effort at creating artificial intelligence goes back decades. And there's a lot of fundamental basic math that powers what is happening today. But that has been developing for since 1950s onwards. And one of the key technologies that has made everything possible that we see today is what are called deep neural networks, which are essentially artificial neural network, very simplistically modeled on what we think our brains are doing. They're very, very simple models in that sense. Yet, they did not become mainstream until about 15 years ago. And the reason, the thing that you're asking, why did it suddenly erupt into the mainstream? Two big things. One was the availability of data to train these models. We did not have internet scale data available until very recently. And the other thing is these deep neural networks require enormous computational power. And even those were not really available until about 15 years ago when people realized that they could use GPUs, graphical processing units, which had been designed for video gaming engines, and people realized that they could co-opt these chips for doing the computations that power deep neural networks. So that transition kind of happened in the late 2000s, early 2010 onwards. And once that transition happened, I think deep neural networks just took over the whole field of machine learning.
Sure. It's impressive how a lot of the foundational maths that we hear, that we study in grade school, like linear algebra, still powers this. So all of us, I mean, those who are students here don't see too many, but if you want ML scientists, perhaps focus on those subjects as well, right? The maths and
I completely agree. I think that has been one of the amazing things about writing the book for me, is that realizing that the math that you need to understand what is happening today actually goes back centuries. The things that you would learn in high school, basic calculus, just some basic probability and statistics, and some linear algebra. And that's kind of enough to understand a lot of what's happening if you really want to get behind the mathematical skin of this field.
Yeah. So, while the technology has come all this here, right? So, one of the questions that's being asked now is, what does it mean for jobs now? And this is where I'll come over to sort of Nitin, right? So, I think your recent book, Human Edge in the AI Age, presents some numbers about how it may disrupt job. By 2040, you talk about how most jobs would be somewhere very different than the way we have now. 35-40% of the jobs will go away. And you have this possible framework of thinking about how to wade through, right? Can you talk through your framework? Can you sort of help us understand how jobs or people can adapt to this change that's coming to it?
Thanks, Arvind. And very interesting day to be having a conversation on deep tech, with the H1B bombshell that has happened today. So that is probably going to do more for the deep tech ecosystem in India than anything. So it's interesting. But getting to AI, it's a big question that you're asking. There is no doubt that AI is going to have a very significant downward impact on jobs as we know them today. So over the next, you can see it in 3 phases, 5 years, 10 and 15. For the next 5 years, perhaps the net impact may not be huge. Now, that will vary quite a bit by sector. So my sector, technology, the impact will be huge. Okay, already, as things stand, we are seeing 40% productivity in a lot of the software development work that we do. Reasonably complex, not simple. This is very complex work. So 40% productivity has translated into needing 40% less humans. Okay, we have not taken out 40% less humans, but at some stage the pressure will happen. So that's a reality. But other industries is not necessarily the case. But if you progress 15 years, the research is pretty consistent that 90 to 100% of current jobs will get impacted in some fashion. Yeah, so every job will change, and 35 to 50% will go away. So that's a rather huge impact, and I'm actually flabbergasted that why are more people not talking about it? My first 2 books were on business and technology. I thought I would write my 3rd book also on that. But when I saw that that number, I felt that we had to address a broader human question. Now, so what's the way out? While AI age, I think is about the end of the era of jobs. That's a bold statement I'm making, but I think it also heralds the age of entrepreneurship. Because with AI, what's also going to happen is that every industry is going to get disrupted in some fashion. While there is automation, which is going to push down on jobs, there is also personalization, there is also innovation. There are different forces happening which will disrupt every industry, and that will create in every industry thousands or hundreds of thousands of opportunities to solve new problems. But that will need a very, very different mindset and set of skills. There is a shift from technical skills to softer skills. The technical skills that we have valued so much over the last many decades are actually going to go down. And either you have the deep tech, you are really, really a deep computer scientist, but most skills that we call tech today will actually be much less relevant. Whereas the softer skills, the problem solving, the entrepreneurial skills, will become way more important. And today we're not ready for that. Our education system or even our enterprises, what the learning and development that we have within enterprises, we are not ready. So I proposed a framework of how do we need to double down on the core human skills. Yeah. So in a world which is changing very, very rapidly, I believe what is important is to anchor on something which is timeless. And the possible is a nice sounding name. It is kind of glass half full. But it's an anagram. So P for problem solving. In an age where AI drives a lot of problem solving, my submission is that still a very important skill for us to focus on. O, openness to change. S, spirituality. And if we get time, we can talk more about that. Why in a conversation about AI feels spirituality is more important than ever. S for sports. I for impact. Impact is this desire that we have as humans to make a difference, to leave a legacy. And that's something which differentiates us from machines. And I think very important to focus on that. P for balance. The nature of life and business, everything is duality. The world is full of contradictions, short term, long term, strategy, execution, man machine, so on and so forth. And mastering duality or finding that balance is going to be extremely critical in a complex world. L for leadership. AI age is the end of the era of jobs. I think it is also the end of the era of managers. So leadership is very important. And the hero of the story, entrepreneurship. So that's the possible framework.
Yeah, it's as you refer to the H-1B tax as called, right? I think already, while it's a serious issue, there's some joke going around Chennaiers who have come back much earlier as to it's a good time to come back to India possibly and build for India, but without taking away the gravity of the issue. So, I think just to build upon your remark, right? Are you sort of saying that maybe single dimensional jobs, right? We code, answering to customary emails, they are easily automatable, but what will still be needed is someone who can think end to end, know when to apply which tool, which solution, which person, what skills, or you have a very foundational deep tech sort of capabilities where you can be ahead of the machines, right? Is that?
See, I don't think it's unfortunately as simple as that is my submission. AI and where AI is today, I think the last 12 months have been quite an inflection point, is no more about, simple, one-dimensional jobs that can be automated. We are far, far beyond that. So, we are, well and truly over the last, 24 was a lot about generative AI. 25, with my clients has all been about agentic AI. And agentic AI is about solving very, very complex problems end to end. Now, I think where the practical solutions are, there is some human in the loop somewhere. Okay. So it's not 0-1. And I think a great disservice we do into the AI debate is to see it as a 0-1 debate. Either, everything will get automated or, AI can do nothing. The reality is somewhere in between, I think tending closer to, it's more than 50%. Many jobs we can see, when I look at agentic AI applications, 60-70% can be productive. The human role is going to be somewhere 30-40%. And that itself is a huge implication. But I don't think it is as simple as saying that simple AI, complicated, has multiple parts, human. I think what is still the human role is about context. If you look at the accuracy or the output of models, and Anil will know it as well or better than me, still, with like a generative AI model, you're getting like 50-60%, you contextualize it, with enterprise domain data, you're getting to 80-90%. There is still a gap. And whatever is that gap is about different layers or levels of context. And I think that context is a word that we are going to see a lot more. Because I think at least in the foreseeable future, it is not just simply about complexity. It is about context that, to do this
set of tasks or to make this decision, what is the context required, and I think that is going to be the human edge, or at least one of the aspects of the human edge. Yeah. So that is one part about using AI machine learning to get to do jobs in the world. There's another part which is how do you create those technologies, right? And what does it take to? And this is where I'll come over to sort of Aayushi as a young entrepreneur in this space. In a fast evolving space like Gen AI, which is where you work, how do you stay? How do you build? How do you sort of stay globally competitive, because the world is again very competitive, right? How do you stay on top of new technologies and make sure you're building your state of the art? That's it.
So, firstly, hi everyone. Good evening. Arvind, when we talk about the competition part, especially in India, China, or US, whenever we think about competition, it's about which country is building the biggest lab or filing the most of the patents, right? And when we are seeing the GDP, only down to 1% of India GDP goes into R&D, right? And coming to USA being the massive innovation part of doing in the world, and China being the mass manufacturing, India comes into the side where they are creating a product or building the models, which is much more lean, adaptable, and also it is much more scalable. So at the end, these products are building from India for the world. So when it comes to competition, right now there is a lot of knowledge that we can consume in the best way, right? And there comes the navigating of abundance, like how we consume those knowledge. For youngsters like us, there is open source technology. There's various social media platforms where we can share our knowledge, but not only consuming it, but also creating it in our way. So in today's world, it's not only about consumptions, but also how you ride on that wave and create something for your own.
So what you're saying essentially is there's a lot of problem to be solved, a lot of companies to be built. We'll see whatever exists as state of the art by building, let's say, the right use case on top of it. And we haven't done enough. There's a lot we can do as a nation, globally as well as for India as well. Yeah. Let's say, and since we are talking about deep tech, specifically in ML, if we have first, let's say, do a deep sea kind of a movement out of India, or as a whole kind of a movement out of India, that is the mindset change we need to do. Anil, you search globally, right? Do you have a point of view on why we are not able to sort of push that frontier out? We'll get to also the research staff numbers and so on shortly, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, if you look at current state of AI models, and when we are talking of AI models, mainly large language models, the two big players really are the US and China. And China actually in the more recent past has started, I would say, innovating in ways that have been really exemplary, because, just this week, we had the first peer-reviewed paper in Nature. DeepSeek R1 got peer-reviewed, and this is the first large language model to be peer-reviewed. And you can see the level of innovation that is coming out of those labs. So I think there I have a feeling that India has kind of fallen behind or even missed the boat on large language models, but that's not necessary. That doesn't necessarily mean that there are other potential things to be thinking about. One of the problems with large language models as it stands today, and Nitin was referring to it also, like, these models are, after all is said and done, we cannot in principle mathematically guarantee accuracy, right? So there is a gap between absolute factual correctness and what these models can do. That's one problem. The other problem is that they're extremely data hungry. So they are inefficient models in that sense of the word. So, and in contrast, we have our own brains, biological brains, not just human brains, but other animals also, that are extremely data efficient, and they work on extremely low amounts of power. So there's something that biological nervous systems are doing that is very, very different compared to what's happening with LLMs. And therein lies a possible avenue for research or for deep tech, which basically means that we have to have a cadre of people who are trained both in neuroscience, in neurobiology, in the math of machine learning, etc., come up with alternative models that can one day supplant LLMs. And I think that will happen. Whether it happens in US or China or here remains to be seen. But these are huge opportunities that exist for disruption of the existing AI models.
So, originally, you're saying now to the field of large data lab computer sources, which arguably we have a little less of, but try to focus on innovation that allows us to learn things a little more efficiently. So, yeah. So this is where we'll segue a little or broaden the scope, right? It's I think the analogies that Anil brought out, and I think what Aayushi was referring to on how do you play in the innovation game while still not relying on, let's say, large models. So a few numbers here, right? I think somewhere referred by Aayushi as well, right? So just to differentiate to the earlier point about deep tech and AI, right? So our national venture funding in AI in startups is less than 10 bill, about just less than 50% effort goes into deep tech, and most effort, 75% or so, goes into AI. So practically, the non-AI part of deep tech funding is small compared to China, where the venture capital funding is pretty large, about 45 million a year. Out of it, 10% almost goes into deep tech. So we have some catch up to do. And how do we do that if we want to catch up? And GDP spend, obviously, we spoke about less than 1% going to research. For publication going to these conferences, and the representation from new universities in China is way higher than some of the top universities like MIT these days at some of these top conferences. So there is ground to be sort of caught up, or we have to figure out our playing field. Grabbing scope here, Nitin, your 3 books talked about digital data AI. It almost seems like the next one should be about beyond AI. I don't know, not putting words in your mouth here. But what are the broad areas when we talk about deep tech? I mean, beyond AI, right? Is it biotech, space, quantum, and what can we be entrepreneurial about here?
Deep tech is a very broad umbrella. This is about using frontier tech or frontier science. Where you really on a continuum from research to application. You're closer to the research end of it, and there is a very wide gamut. Beyond AI, biotech is of course very, very significant area. Material science. Where fascinating set of fascinating innovation is happening. There are a lot of it getting applied to space tech. Tremendous work happening there, and I think that really is, at least my hypothesis is that whatever is happening with AI is going to propel, space exploration. That is going to accelerate that. So that's a completely different discussion. And of course, then you have quantum, which can take, compute to a completely different level. So there is a very wide gamut. I think as far as deep tech is in India is concerned, I think first we have to acknowledge that we have a huge challenge. We have a fundamental gap or disconnect, which is, to my mind, more than one generation gap. I think for us to make progress on all the areas at the same time is perhaps very tough. We should identify maybe a couple of areas, where very concerted investment can happen. Because we've talked about the venture capital or private equity numbers. See, where the ecosystem is in India today, it's not. I think returns are going to be tough, and therefore the government may need to step in and kind of invest in that ecosystem. So I think picking areas becomes very important. I think AI, of course, is something we have to do. Space tech is the other one, which I would say that, with our space program, we have shown competence, we have shown output, which is something, we should focus on. The other thing I would say is that uh, that may or may not be a kind of the right thing to say in a deep tech panel, but just being realistic, our competitive advantage over the next 10 years is not going to come from deep tech. I think we are too far away. We are too far away. Okay. And the biggest issue I see is that, especially the kind of jobs that exist in India, which is very, very heavily services driven, AI is going to throttle them first. So we are not talking about it, but that actually is the biggest crisis we are about to face. Okay. And deep tech immediately will not be an answer to that. And I think there is a need, even in AI, the opportunity for us is in the application layer, which may not be at the cutting edge of deep tech. Okay. But that's where innovation, entrepreneurship, and jobs are going to get created. So I just wanted to, there are a number of things I've talked about, that the wide array of deep tech, recognizing points that you and Aayushi both made, that we are quite behind. So I think we have to take that position. And I agree with where Anil was going, that, all this kind of, obsession about building a Bharat LLM, to me, it's a little bit of show and tell and drama as opposed to real substance, because it's only a catch-up game. So we have to really, really, really thin slice it and figure out, where we can really make a difference. But over the next 10 years, the biggest crisis we have is one of AI, driving down a job compression. And the answer to it may be still in the application layer, not the deep tech layer.
But is it a choice we have, right? I understand that one is a little more pressing need given the job scenario, but arguably as a nation, would like to be attacking on both fronts, right? What's our differentiator in that play is...
No, of course, see, we have to push. I'm just saying, AI, which I know better, and I've been engaged in a fair amount of policy conversations, because one of the reasons for me to write the book was that I saw a crisis, and I didn't see that we were approaching it at the war footing that is needed. You go and talk to the India AI mission. Majority of the conversation, or 95% plus of the conversation, is about the LLM or is about building the chip, both of which are very important. From a self-reliance, Bharat, Atam Nirbhar, whatever, self-reliance, and, it is very, very important. I agree. But the biggest crisis, it is not going to solve our biggest crisis and our biggest opportunity. Our biggest crisis is jobs. Our opportunity is converting, really unleashing a tsunami of entrepreneurship. That's our opportunity. And we have to, see, we should not just be driven by just slogans. And that is the answer for the US, and what is the answer for China is not necessarily the answer for us. And therefore, we have to be conscious about our reality.
Sure. So an example of use of AI in solving maybe a more real problem, I think AlphaFold, we have heard about how it's helped drug discovery by probably the need for simulating or I think even trials for many drug options, right? Or similar things are being used for new material discovery for different use cases as well. So coming back on the creation side of it as well, also beyond the consumption side, one question before we open the floor for a question, and this is for Anil. So Anil, your books have covered science on cosmos to quantum to even arguably spirituality yourself, right, or meta spirituality in some sense, right? How do you sort of keep that curiosity? In a sense, do you see that as necessary to navigate this space on either on creation of the kind of technology differentiators we talked about, or and how do we keep up that sort of energy, or how do you keep up that energy to discover new things?
I think personally for me, as the curiosity has always been there. So I don't know where that came from. Potentially good teachers back in high school. But to me, the real challenge about even looking at deep tech 10 years from now is the fact that in order to have a good deep tech ecosystem 10 years or 15 years from now, we need to be looking at how our, basic education, which, equips people with really, like I said, curiosity in science, wanting to really understand why things work, why things are the way they are, so that we can then push the envelope and come up with new ideas. I think a groundswell of sort of basic education needs to be there at a much better scale than we have right now. Because India's strength in some very basic level is in the numbers of people that we have. But if those numbers are not approaching their working lives completely trained and curious and eager to understand and come up with new innovations, then we are losing the battle. So to me, the real hard work needs to be done in primary schools and high schools, and getting people equipped to be good scientists or good engineers and technologists going forward.
So two key points then, I think jobs and basic sort of education curiosity as sort of. Will we open the floor for questions? Yeah, I said, how do we understand our children do not depend on the technology or AI? You need to have a strong foundation in let's say maths or anywhere. Okay, I'll give an example. For example, spelling, they say, where does it? Why should I learn spelling? Autocorrection is happening. If it is calculation, the Excel is there. Now, our engineering days, what is to me, draft used to be there. Now CAD came and all the thing. So we know foundation is important. Our own children, it is very difficult to make them because of the comfort level. How do we make them understand this technology is a tool, but strong foundation is required in a simplest way or a story way? How do we make them understand?
I don't have an answer that is going to be scalable. This is going to be something that individual teachers will have to take it upon themselves. First of all, they themselves have to be aware of AI being just a tool, so that they don't. I know of teachers also who use AI just to come up with lesson plans, and that already is, messing up the education process. So I think it cuts across the board. I don't have a scalable solution here, because when people talk of education and technology, they think technology is going to be the thing that will scale up and make everything possible. I don't believe that. I think education is a very interpersonal game. And the more we realize that it's us as teachers and people in the broader culture that are involved in interactions with children, and making sure that we inculcate them with the necessary levels of curiosity and interest, so that they actually want to learn rather than just rely on the tools. Unless we do that across the board, I don't see how it's going to. And this is not just a problem with India; it's everywhere, right? Honestly, I'm actually fairly pessimistic about how this is all going right now.
Can I add something to this?
Yeah.
So the use of technology or AI and the negative impact it has on our cognitive skills, or the way we develop cognitive skills, I think is a very real issue. I also feel that strongly. But at the same time, I would also offer that not just our generation, but across generations, as parents, we also always tend to be somewhat overly pessimistic about the learning process of our children. But maybe, we overdo it. Certainly, the nature of technology is changing quite a bit. That it is changing from building technology to consuming technology. And it's a very different process that, your children may not be, well, certainly when I learned, programming, it was, logic flow, pseudocode, blah, blah, blah. When my son learned programming, first day he used drag and drop and came back with a program. Okay, so it's a very different method. And I think we should also let that play out. So, every year in my company, we have summer interns. And this year, the output that summer interns had, and maybe average age of 19 or 20, was unbelievable. And, we could use a lot of that in both our client work and in our platforms. And, with AI disrupting the technology process quite a bit, our assumption initially was that this is going to lead to like the pyramid going away, especially the bottom end of the jobs, and it kind of becoming a diamond.
But what we're now finding is that may be happening, but the folks who are most change ready and actually driving it are the youngest guys. So I think maybe we also on learning, we have grown up with a certain framework and certain assumptions, and maybe we should also let that play out a bit, and not try to just superimpose our assumptions on a world which is changing quite a bit.
Yeah. Just one small remark, and then we'll come to Saju's question. Right? At least with my team, I asked them to take whatever they're hearing from ChatGPT. Don't tell me that this is the answer because ChatGPT gave me. Right? Can you cross question it? Right. So, Saju.
Yes, and we touched on this briefly. Everything we've had, the discussion we've had so far is, to me, appears that we are using an old framework to define a very uncertain future. So I'm going to throw a scenario at you guys, and I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. We have AI evolving in its direction. The other technologies that I'm looking at is nuclear fusion, right? Quantum, robotics, where robotics is now combined with vision and human level senses, right? The 5 senses that we have. Now, in a world which I would say 5 to 7 years down the line, where all of these start coming together, right? Where you have humanoids that are able to do work that humans, and we said, oh, it's only the digital work, the physical work, the mechanics and plumbers are not going to get affected. Guess what? All of that is affected. Now, in that scenario, what do you guys see the world as, where jobs basically are completely gone?
And I'm getting pushback from the organizers, so maybe request for me to keep the answers brief, and so that we can try to cover.
I'm not sure I see those other technologies coming to fruition that quickly. Quantum computing, fusion, even embodied AI, especially replacing plumbers, absolutely not. Some aspects, yes, but I think there are things that the human body does that is a long way for AI, a long way away for AI. So all of them coming together at the same time, I still feel that's more than 7-8 years away. Hard to prognosticate. But I think it is coming, yes. I honestly, it's very, very hard to see how this is all going to play out. I mean, right now, I feel like we are in a particular cycle where, yes, like Nitin was pointing out, there's a lot of disruption happening, a lot of jobs are going to go, but there's also a lot of hype about what's going to go. And so the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, and we are all still navigating that space and don't quite see how it's going to pan out. So,
just one small remark. I think I look at this as an opportunity to divert resources to problems that are not addressed right now, because unfortunately, as a society, we have spent a lot of resources on problems which have commercial value right now, but probably disproportionately higher. One more question. Do we have time to take one?
Yeah, one last, I will. My question is a little more from a broader perspective, right? So essentially, there are 5 pillars or 5 buckets where an organization operates, right? So they try to build the top line. They try to maybe work on their bottom line, right? Or they try to do something on the customer retention, customer experience, right? So they try to do something about employee satisfaction as well, right? And the 5th is more on the ESG part, right? So these are essentially these 5 buckets. So yeah, more or less in our house, right? Everybody will agree that cost optimization, definitely AI will help. That bottom line, they will try to improve. Other than that, the 4 buckets, right? Which of the bucket you feel that it will play a better card? Let's say sales growth or customer satisfaction or employee satisfaction, right? And or maybe ESG, and why? So leaving aside cost optimization, how you see this unfolding towards the other buckets? Am I clear in the question?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we have to compare between the sales and the second point which you mentioned.
Customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and ESG.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I give my personal experience as I'm building also one product. When it comes to AI, right? The first thing that will be a great for next few years is the
customer satisfaction. That is one that we are going through, because the way we make our flow on how customer is coming on the platform and how the experience is. So that is one that is totally taken care by the AI. And the second that also Nitin mentioned is the contextual level of understanding for any AI. And the second is the reinforcement learning. So for me, the results getting much more personalized as a user going into any platform, that will make me stay on that platform and use it in a better way. Even most of the e-commerce startups like Zepto or Blinkit is doing it in a best way, right? I hope I answer your question.
Technology, but I would like to hear more from Nitin or maybe Anil as well. Yeah.
No, I kind of agree with Aayushi. Just to put a little bit of a sense of proportion on the 5 buckets that you laid out. 80 to 90% today of the use cases are automation or cost driven. So it's an overwhelming proportion. I think it gets to the point Anil made that at least in the short, medium term, which is the next 18, 24 months, which is the typical investment horizon for our enterprise. We are still not there where you can do a lot of customer oriented, new product, top line oriented innovation. So there is, compared to the hype or talk around it and the actual implementation, I think there's a big gap. The vast majority it's 80-90% is automation. I think of the 5 areas, one area which you did not call out, or maybe it was embedded somewhere, is risk. Okay, is risk. So which is managing and reducing your risk. It could be from a compliance perspective, it could be a cybersecurity perspective. And that is also, I would say, in addition to the personalization and the customer support aspect, managing risk is somewhere where I see AI getting used quite significant.
We are out of time. I think we are being booted out. So, but I think if I can speak for the speakers, some of us would be around, so you should be able. Sorry about this, ma'am. On that optimistic note, that we can note that we believe a lot of things can be made better and some problems to be solved. I think we'll wrap up this session. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. I request all the speakers to kindly remain on the stage. If a good discussion is the one where you leave with more questions than answers, then I think this one definitely was one. So thank you for that insightful and thought-provoking discussion. And yes, may I take this opportunity to please invite Mr. Saju Jain, Head Forward Alumni Association Bangalore, to kindly join me on the stage to present a token of appreciation to our speakers. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, can we please have a huge round of applause for this insightful discussion right well?
Sure. Sorry,
So we'll have to do it again.
Hold on, I was the big question here. I think, and Anil was your also was treated. I that's your issue. Only looking at the Kelsey, they guess much happened is process and the entire.
And with this, we have come to the end of all the sessions for today.
Let's be asked. Once
again, thanking all the speakers from the 10th session, India's Deep Tech Playbook. Thank you so much for being a part of the Bangalore Business Literature Festival.